Welcome to Percolating Perspective Podcast, the podcast that offers you some perspective on America. I'm your host, Gordon Michael Porter. Thank you so much for tuning in today and listening to yet another episode of Percolating Perspective. We have got a very exciting and hopeful and encouraging show for you today. I'm going to show you a few things about America's history and America's past, and specifically America's foundation that I think will really give you hope. It definitely gave me hope doing the research for it. Don't forget May 1st. We only have, I believe, 2 weeks left. May 1st, the name of the show is going to change to Brewed in America. Reason we're doing this, as I've mentioned on other episodes, the reason we're doing this is for advertising purposes and to get this show in front of more people like yourself that love coffee, that love America. Whenever you're Googling, America shows or podcasts about America, the last thing that's going to come up is a title called Percolating Perspective. And we recognize that. And we want to get this podcast in front of many, many, many others. You guys have made it grow by leaps and bounds with the flaws that it has. And I thank you for that, and I appreciate you for doing that. But we're going to put this show on the map, and we're going to get more people involved, and we are going to get America back on the right track and help her to remember where she came from, because she is feeding the hogs and sleeping with the hogs and feeding the hogs out in the barn with the prodigal son. So we're going to get her back in and get her back where she needs to be. But first, the drip of the day. So today's drip, I'm actually, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm drinking out of my Yeti mug with my nice Glock sticker on it, which is my favorite mug. It's a big one. It's a big Yeti, but that's okay. Today's roast comes from the Appalachian Mountains out of North Carolina, and specifically out of a town, I'm trying to remember the name of the town, Hollingsworth, North Carolina, I believe. Anyway, it's up in the Appalachian Mountains. And this roast is called the Creation Roast, and it is a wonderful breakfast roast. It's not very bold, but as the bag describes itself, it's a very clean and it's a very crisp flavor. And it, unlike several of the coffees we've had in the past several weeks, it is not a lot of acid. It doesn't have a lot of citrus to it. This is more of a floral flavor. It's a little bit more earthy. So it's creation kind of, to me, that kind of goes back to the creation of the earth. I don't know if that's what they intended it to be or not. But whenever I'm thinking creation, I'm thinking flowers, I'm thinking fresh grass, I'm thinking earth, I'm thinking dirt. And, while it does not taste like any of those things, it does taste very floral. It is very aromatic. And so they don't add any flavors to it. The beans come from, I believe, Guatemala. And, it's a single source coffee, and it is a wonderful cup of coffee. It smells amazing. You have to be careful when you're grinding it, because it is a little bit of it's a less dense bean. It's a little softer. So when you're putting it in the grinder, it does not take long at all for it to get to a medium or a fine grind. So you have to be careful with that. I know my coffee grinder, there's just 3 settings. There's coarse, there's medium, and there's fine. If you put this on the medium setting, you're more than likely going to get a fine roast. When you're brewing it, it's a delicious smelling coffee. It fills the house. Of course, most coffees do, but this one is just different. I don't know how to explain it. It's something that you're going to have to go take a look at and purchase. This one is, again, Appalachian Coffee Roasters. This is the Creation Roast. This is a light to medium blend and something that will really, really be good for you in the mornings. Get your day moving and not be, burning the back of your throat with a dark roast. So check that out. AppalachianCoffeeRoasters.com. Now, today we're going to go back to America's foundation and really examine it, and the reason why I will get to towards the end of the podcast. But I want to, first of all, recognize America's foundation and examine it. Many of our episodes, we've talked about the cornerstones. We've talked about pieces of the foundation, but I don't think we've ever really gone over and examined what is the true foundation of the United States as we know it, or as, America as we know it. Well, funny enough, this podcast is not the first person or the first entity to ask that question. Back in 1818, a man by the name of Guy Niles was trying to write a textbook, and he was going around to the founding fathers who at this point were still alive, a lot of them, those that made it through the American Revolution alive. And he is writing a textbook to let the future generations know exactly what happened in the American founding. You can get copies of this book. It's tough to find, but it is written by Guy Niles, and I believe it's just called The American Founding. But he goes to John Adams, and he asks John Adams, hey, who is responsible for the American Revolution? Who is responsible for, in your opinion, John Adams, who do we need to look to emulate? Who, in your opinion, is responsible for bringing the American Revolution to fruition? Well, he gives 5 names. He gives one, Reverend Jonah Mayhew, George Whitefield, Reverend Charles Chauncey. My handwriting's bad. Chauncey. Reverend Charles Chauncey, Reverend Samuel Cooper, and Harry Hoosier. Now, of all these 5, there's something in common. One of them, the first thing that's in common, you might say, in my opinion, you've probably never heard of any of these guys. So to say that these 5 are the ones that are responsible for the American Revolution is kind of shocking. And that's big language coming from John Adams. But these 5 unknowns, you might say, are what John Adams credits for bringing freedom to the world, or to the United States, rather. Now, the other thing that these 5 have in common, you'll notice I said Reverend 3 times, and you'll notice that I just called them by their first name twice. Now, all that means is a few of these are Methodist and Presbyterian. But of these 5, all 5 of them are preachers. Jonah Mayhew, George Whitefield, Charles Chauncey, Samuel Cooper, and Harry Hoosier. Now, that's pretty incredible that John Adams, in his opinion, the 5 people that are most responsible, the most credible for the founding of the American way of life, for the American Revolution, is 5 preachers.